Have you ever reached the end of a long day and wondered, what exactly did I accomplish today? You were busy from morning till evening. You answered messages, attended meetings, replied to emails, helped people, crossed off dozens of small tasks, and yet, the one thing that could have changed your life remained untouched. Now imagine doing this every single day. A week becomes a month. A month becomes a year. One day you wake up and realize you've been running faster than ever, but somehow you've been running in circles. The truth is, most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're distracted. They don't lack talent. They lack direction. And the sad part is that the modern world rewards busyness so much that we rarely stop to ask the most important question. Am I climbing the right mountain, or am I just climbing faster? Welcome to Volume and Vision, the channel where we transform life-changing books into practical lessons you can use immediately. Today's journey is based on one of the most powerful productivity books ever written, Organize Tomorrow Today. But this isn't another video telling you to wake up at 4 in the morning, drink 5 liters of water before sunrise, meditate on a mountain, or color code every minute of your calendar. Instead, today you'll discover something much simpler. A few small habits that quietly separate ordinary performers from extraordinary ones. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to stop reacting to life and start designing it. You'll discover why planning tomorrow before today ends can completely change your future, why focusing on only one important task often beats trying to complete 20, and why your biggest enemy isn't lack of time, it's lack of clarity. And here's the exciting part. None of these ideas require more hours. They simply require better decisions. So let's begin. Imagine 2 friends who graduate from college together. Both are equally intelligent. Both get similar jobs. Both earn almost the same salary. 5 years later, one has received multiple promotions, started investing, built healthy relationships, and still finds time for hobbies. The other constantly feels overwhelmed. He complains about having no time. His health is getting worse. His goals remain unfinished. What happened? Did one person suddenly become a genius? No. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even hard work. The difference was something much smaller. One person learned to make tomorrow easier before tomorrow arrived. Every evening, while most people simply closed their laptops and escaped into social media, he spent a few quiet minutes deciding what truly mattered for the next day. That tiny habit changed everything. Because every morning he woke up with purpose. While everyone else was asking, what should I do today? He already knew the answer. It sounds almost too simple. Can 5 minutes really change your life? Let's think about it. Before a pilot flies hundreds of passengers across the world, what does he do? He doesn't just start the engines and hope everything works out. He checks the route. He studies the weather. He prepares for problems before they happen. A surgeon doesn't walk into an operating room and figure things out during surgery. An athlete doesn't arrive at the championship without months of preparation. Success almost never begins during the performance. It begins long before anyone notices. Yet somehow, when it comes to our own lives, we expect ourselves to wake up every morning, open our phones, and magically make perfect decisions while notifications, emails, family responsibilities, and unexpected problems compete for our attention. No wonder we feel exhausted. We're trying to make important decisions while standing in the middle of chaos. Think about your brain like a smartphone. When dozens of applications are running in the background, what happens? The battery drains faster. Everything becomes slower. Even simple tasks start freezing. Our minds work the same way. Every unfinished decision keeps consuming mental energy. Should I start studying? Should I exercise first? Should I answer that email? Should I clean my room? Should I finish that project? Should I call my friend? Every one of these questions quietly steals attention before you've even started working. That's why highly productive people don't simply manage time. They reduce unnecessary decisions. Decision fatigue is real. Every choice you make throughout the day consumes a small amount of mental energy. Scientists have discovered that the quality of our decisions gradually declines as we make more and more choices. That's one reason why successful people often simplify their daily routines. Some wear similar clothes every day. Others eat similar breakfasts, not because they lack creativity, but because they want to protect their mental energy for decisions that actually matter. Now imagine starting every morning already knowing your most important mission. No confusion. No endless scrolling through your to-do list. No wondering where to begin. Just one clear direction. Suddenly your brain isn't wasting energy deciding. It's using that energy to create. This brings us to one of the biggest myths about productivity. Most people believe productivity means doing more. More meetings, more tasks, more emails, more hours, more hustle. But think about an archer aiming at a target. Would shooting 100 arrows randomly make him successful? Of course not. One perfectly aimed arrow is worth far more than 100 careless shots. Life works exactly the same way. Doing more doesn't guarantee better results. Doing the right things does. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water while there's a hole at the bottom. Would pouring water faster solve the problem? No. The smarter solution is fixing the hole first. Many people spend their lives pouring more effort into the wrong priorities instead of asking whether their priorities are correct in the first place. That's why some people stay busy for years without making meaningful progress. They're working hard, just not on what matters. Let's do a small thought experiment. Suppose I give you 24 hours to change your future. You cannot add extra time. You cannot borrow hours from tomorrow. You cannot stop sleeping. You only have the same 24 hours everyone else has. What would you protect first? Most people immediately think about protecting time. But that's not actually the most valuable resource. Attention is. Because time without attention is useless. Have you ever read the same page of a book 3 times because your mind kept wandering? An hour passed, but almost nothing entered your memory. Time was spent. Attention wasn't. Have you ever opened YouTube intending to watch one educational video and suddenly realized 90 minutes had disappeared? Again, time passed. Attention was stolen. Your future isn't built by hours alone. It's built by where your attention goes. Attention is like sunlight. Spread it everywhere, and nothing grows. Focus it through a magnifying glass, and it becomes powerful enough to start a fire. Every extraordinary achievement in history was created by people who learned to protect their attention from unnecessary distractions. They understood something that most people forget. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're silently saying no to something important. Every notification, every unnecessary meeting, every random scroll through social media, every interruption, each one seems harmless by itself. But together they slowly steal the life you wanted to build. Imagine trying to read an exciting novel while someone interrupts you every 30 seconds. Could you enjoy the story? Could you deeply understand it? Probably not. Yet that's exactly how many people spend their workdays. Constant interruptions leave the brain permanently stuck in shallow thinking. And shallow thinking produces shallow results. Great work requires uninterrupted attention. Not because talented people have better brains, but because they give their brains enough uninterrupted time to think deeply. Here's another interesting question. Why do children become completely absorbed while building a puzzle or drawing pictures? Because they're fully present. They aren't checking messages every few minutes. They aren't switching between 5 different tasks. They give complete attention to one thing. Ironically, the ability we naturally possess as children becomes one of the hardest skills to recover as adults. The modern world constantly trains us to divide our attention. But success almost always rewards people who can unite it. Now, before we continue, I want you to remember one simple sentence because it might become the most valuable idea you hear today. A successful day rarely begins in the morning. It begins the evening before. That single shift changes everything. Instead of waking up and reacting, you wake up ready. Instead of following distractions, you follow a plan. Instead of hoping the day goes well, you give it a direction before it even starts. And that small difference, repeated day after day, eventually becomes the difference between an average life and an extraordinary one. The good news is that this is only the beginning. Because once you understand how to prepare tomorrow before today ends, the next step is learning something even more powerful. How to identify the one task that has the greatest power to transform your entire day, even when everything else goes wrong. The biggest mistake most people make is believing that every task deserves equal importance. It doesn't. Imagine that you're standing in front of a table with 10 keys lying on it. Only one of those keys can unlock the door you're trying to open. Would you waste your energy polishing all 10 keys? Or would you focus on the one that actually opens the door? This is exactly how life works. Every day presents us with dozens of opportunities to stay busy. But only a handful of those activities actually move our lives forward. The challenge isn't working harder. The challenge is recognizing which key unlocks the next door. Think about the most successful people you admire. An Olympic athlete doesn't spend the majority of training time choosing new sports shoes or organizing the locker room. A best-selling author doesn't spend 6 hours selecting fonts before writing a single sentence. A successful entrepreneur doesn't build a company by constantly refreshing email. They understand that every day has one activity capable of creating the biggest impact. Everything else is secondary. Now ask yourself a simple question. If someone watched you for an entire week without hearing your goals, would they be able to guess what matters most in your life? Would they say your biggest priority is your career, your studies, your health, your family, or would they simply conclude that your highest priority is checking notifications? Our calendars tell the truth even when our words don't. Many people say they want success, but their daily schedule quietly says something completely different. This is why every evening, before tomorrow begins, you should ask yourself one powerful question. If tomorrow only goes right in one area, what must be completed? Notice the wording, not what would be nice to finish, not what feels urgent, not what someone else expects. What absolutely must happen? That single question forces your brain to separate movement from progress. Because urgency and importance are rarely the same thing. Imagine a firefighter entering a burning building. Would they stop to organize furniture? Would they answer phone calls? Would they clean the windows? Of course not. Every action is chosen according to one question. What matters most right now? Life may not be as dramatic as a burning building, but the principle remains exactly the same. Your attention should follow importance, not urgency. One of the greatest traps of modern life is confusing other people's priorities with your own. Your phone rings. Someone sends an email. A message arrives. Suddenly your carefully planned morning disappears. Without realizing it, you've spent the first 3 hours solving everyone else's problems while your own dreams patiently wait in the corner. Eventually those dreams stop waiting. They quietly disappear. That's why successful people protect the first hours of their day like treasure. Not because they're selfish, because they understand something incredibly valuable. The world will always demand your attention. Your future never will. Your future waits silently. If you don't choose it, nobody else will. Let's imagine two students preparing for the same competitive examination. Rahul spends 8 hours every day studying. Or at least that's what he tells people. He watches educational videos. He highlights entire textbooks. He rearranges his study table. He downloads productivity apps. He buys expensive notebooks. He feels productive. But when exam day arrives, very little of that work translates into results. Now meet Arjun. He studies only 5 focused hours. Before each day begins, he identifies the single topic that will improve his score the most. He finishes the topic before checking social media, before replying to unnecessary messages, before worrying about anything else. Month after month, those focused decisions quietly separate him from everyone around him. Who do you think succeeds? The person who looked busy, or the person who made progress? Real productivity is surprisingly boring. It isn't dramatic. It isn't loud. It doesn't always feel exciting. Most breakthroughs are built during ordinary days that nobody notices. A musician improves by practicing scales. An athlete improves by repeating simple movements. A programmer becomes better by solving one problem after another. A writer finishes a book by completing one page every day. Success rarely arrives through one spectacular effort. It grows through thousands of ordinary decisions made consistently. There's an old story about two woodcutters. Both begin cutting trees early in the morning. The first works continuously without stopping. The second takes short breaks every hour. By sunset, surprisingly, the second woodcutter has cut down more trees. Curious, the first asks, "How did you beat me when you spent so much time resting?" The second smiles and replies, "I wasn't resting. I was sharpening my axe." Many people treat planning as wasted time. They believe action is everything. But planning sharpens action. 5 minutes of clear thinking can save hours of confused effort. Imagine beginning a road trip without entering a destination into your navigation system. You might drive all day. You might burn an entire tank of fuel. You might even enjoy the journey. But eventually you'll ask the uncomfortable question. Where exactly am I going? That's exactly what happens when we begin our mornings without deciding our priority. We mistake motion for direction. And direction always wins. There's another reason why identifying one priority works so well. Your brain loves completion. Every unfinished task quietly occupies mental space. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as the brain's tendency to keep reminding us about incomplete work. That's why unfinished conversations, incomplete projects, and unresolved decisions keep returning to our thoughts. But finishing one meaningful task creates psychological momentum. Momentum is powerful. Imagine pushing a heavy car. The hardest moment isn't after it's moving. The hardest moment is getting it moving in the first place. Once momentum builds, continuing becomes much easier. Your first important task creates that momentum. That's why your morning matters so much. If your first victory is checking social media, your brain enters consumption mode. If your first victory is completing meaningful work, your brain enters creation mode. One decision quietly shapes the rest of your day. Let's talk about another hidden enemy. Perfectionism. Many people delay important work because they want the perfect plan, the perfect mood, the perfect workspace, the perfect opportunity. But perfection is one of the smartest disguises procrastination ever invented. Imagine a painter staring at a blank canvas. He spends hours choosing brushes, mixing colors, adjusting the lighting, cleaning the table, but he never actually begins painting. Would anyone call him productive? Preparation matters, but preparation without action becomes another form of delay. The goal isn't creating a perfect first attempt. The goal is creating something you can improve tomorrow. Think about every skyscraper you've ever seen. Did construction begin with the 100th floor? No, it began with a single hole in the ground. Small beginnings often produce extraordinary endings. There's another habit that quietly steals our progress. Constantly switching between tasks. Picture a train traveling from one city to another. Every time it changes tracks unnecessarily, it loses speed. Your brain behaves the same way. Every interruption forces your mind to restart. That's why checking your phone, just for a minute, often costs much more than 1 minute. Your attention needs time to return. Researchers have found that after an interruption, it can take much longer than we expect to regain deep focus. The interruption ends quickly, its consequences don't. So create moments when nothing can interrupt your most important work. Turn your phone over, silence notifications, close unnecessary tabs. Let people know you'll respond later. For 1 hour, choose depth over availability. You may discover that one focused hour creates more progress than an entire distracted afternoon. Here's another interesting truth. People often say they don't have enough time. But usually, they don't have enough uninterrupted time. There's a huge difference. Imagine filling a bucket with water while someone keeps poking holes in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour, the bucket never fills. Interruptions are those holes. Protect your focus, and suddenly the same 24 hours begin producing completely different results. Before we move forward, I'd like you to imagine tomorrow morning. Your alarm rings. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone, you already know exactly what needs to happen. You sit down. No hesitation. No debate, no scrolling, no wondering where to begin. Just one meaningful task waiting for your attention. You complete it. Maybe it takes 30 minutes. Maybe 90. But when you're finished, something remarkable happens. Even if the rest of your day becomes chaotic. Even if unexpected meetings appear. Even if plans suddenly change. You've already won. Because the most important promise you made yesterday has been kept today. And every time you keep a promise to yourself, something invisible grows stronger. Not your schedule, not your calendar, your self-confidence. Because confidence doesn't come from motivational speeches. Confidence comes from collecting evidence that you can trust yourself. The more often you keep those small promises, the more your mind begins to believe something powerful. If I decide to do something, I actually do it, and that belief becomes the foundation for every larger goal you'll ever chase. But identifying your most important task is only the beginning. The real challenge begins on the day when motivation disappears. Because anyone can stay disciplined when they feel inspired. The people with extraordinary results are the ones who continue moving forward even on the days when they don't feel like taking the next step. Even the strongest people eventually face a day when they don't feel motivated. You wake up tired. Your energy is low. Nothing feels exciting. The goal that inspired you last week suddenly feels heavy. The work you were eager to begin now feels like a burden. At that moment, most people make a dangerous mistake. They believe something is wrong. They assume motivation has disappeared, so maybe the goal wasn't important after all. But that's not what is happening. You're simply standing at one of the most important moments of growth. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. The first few minutes are exciting. Everything feels new. You imagine yourself riding effortlessly through the streets. Then reality arrives. You lose balance. You fall. You get frustrated. Suddenly quitting seems easier than trying again. Now imagine if every child quit after the first fall. None of us would ever learn to ride. The same pattern repeats throughout life. Every meaningful habit begins with excitement. Then comes resistance. That resistance isn't your enemy. It's proof that your old habits are fighting to stay alive. Your brain loves familiarity. It doesn't care whether your current routine is making you successful or miserable. It only cares that it's familiar. That's why even positive change can feel uncomfortable. Imagine moving into a new house. For the first few days, you accidentally walk toward the wrong room. You reach for light switches that aren't there. You forget where things are kept. Nothing is wrong with your memory. Your brain is simply following old pathways. Habits work exactly the same way. Every new routine feels awkward before it feels natural. Most people quit during this awkward stage. Not because they can't succeed. Because they mistake discomfort for failure. Let's imagine a man named Daniel. He decides to wake up 1 hour earlier every morning to work on the business he's always dreamed about. The first 3 mornings feel incredible. He's excited. He imagines future success. He feels unstoppable. By the 4th morning, however, something changes. His alarm rings. His bed suddenly feels much more comfortable. His brain begins negotiating. You worked hard yesterday. You deserve more sleep. You can always start tomorrow. Notice something interesting. The excuses don't sound unreasonable. In fact, they sound perfectly logical. That's why excuses are so dangerous. The most dangerous excuses aren't the ridiculous ones. They're the believable ones. Every person has a voice inside their head capable of creating convincing reasons to postpone important work. Successful people hear that voice too. The difference is they don't let it make decisions. Imagine you're driving through heavy rain. Your windshield becomes covered with water. For a few moments, you can barely see the road. Would you stop driving forever? No. You simply switch on the windshield wipers and keep moving. Negative thoughts should be treated the same way. They are weather, not direction. They come. They go. They don't deserve control over your destination. One powerful habit is learning to separate your feelings from your commitments. Instead of saying, "I'll work when I feel motivated," say, "I'll work because I made a commitment." Feelings change every day. Commitments remain. Think about a bridge. It doesn't disappear every time the weather changes. Whether it's sunny or stormy, the bridge stays where it was built. Your discipline should become that bridge. Reliable, predictable, unaffected by temporary emotions. Another mistake many people make is believing that success requires giant leaps. It rarely does. Imagine standing at the bottom of a staircase leading to the top of a mountain. From where you're standing, the summit looks impossibly far away. If you focus only on the top, you may never begin climbing. But what if you focused on just the next step? Suddenly the journey becomes manageable. Life rewards consistency far more than intensity. Anyone can stay motivated for 3 days. Almost anyone can work hard for one exciting weekend. Very few people can quietly repeat small actions for months without immediate rewards. That's where extraordinary lives are built. A farmer doesn't dig up seeds every week to check whether they're growing. He waters them, protects them, trusts the process. Eventually, the harvest arrives. Many people abandon their goals simply because they expect immediate results. They exercise for 1 week and expect dramatic changes. They study for 3 days and expect mastery. They launch a business and expect instant success. Real growth is usually invisible in the beginning. Think about bamboo. For years after planting, almost nothing appears above the ground. It seems as though nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, an enormous network of roots is spreading. Then, almost suddenly, it shoots upward at astonishing speed. People call it overnight success. They never notice the years spent building invisible foundations. Your habits are building roots even when you can't yet see the tree. That's why patience is one of the greatest competitive advantages in the modern world. Everyone wants quick rewards. Very few are willing to invest quietly. Now let's talk about something surprisingly powerful. The conversations you have with yourself. Imagine spending an entire day with someone who constantly tells you, "You're not good enough. You always fail. Why even bother trying?" Eventually, that person's words would affect your confidence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Many of us say those exact things to ourselves. Our inner voice becomes our harshest critic. Every mistake becomes evidence that we're incapable. Every setback becomes proof we'll never succeed. What if you spoke to a close friend that way? Would the friendship survive? Probably not. So why do we accept that treatment from ourselves? The goal isn't pretending everything is perfect. The goal is speaking truth with encouragement instead of judgment. Instead of saying, "I always procrastinate," try, "I'm learning to become someone who starts sooner." Instead of, "I'm terrible at this," say, "I'm still improving." Notice the difference. The first statement locks you into an identity. The second creates room for growth. Your brain listens carefully to the words you repeat. If every day you tell yourself you're lazy, your mind begins looking for evidence that supports that identity. But if you consistently remind yourself, "I finish what I begin," your brain starts searching for opportunities to prove that statement true. Identity always comes before behavior. A person who believes they are healthy naturally makes healthier choices. Someone who believes they're responsible usually behaves responsibly. Change the identity, and behavior begins changing with it. Here's a simple exercise. Every morning before beginning your most important task, pause for 1 minute. Take a slow breath. Then quietly remind yourself who you're becoming. Not who you were 5 years ago. Not who others think you are. Who you're choosing to become today. Perhaps your sentence is, "I keep promises to myself." Or, "I complete meaningful work before distractions." Or simply, "I improve a little every day." At first these words may feel unfamiliar. That's okay. Every identity begins as a choice before it becomes a reality. Think about actors preparing for an important role. Before filming begins, they study the character repeatedly until thinking, speaking, and behaving that way becomes natural. You're doing something similar, except the character you're creating is your future self. The remarkable thing is that your future isn't built once. It's built daily. Every morning you cast another vote for the person you're becoming. Every action is another vote. Every habit is another vote. Every promise you keep is another vote. Eventually those votes become your identity. And once your identity changes, maintaining good habits no longer feels like forcing yourself. It simply feels like acting consistently with who you are. There's another lesson that successful people understand remarkably well. They don't expect every day to be perfect. Some mornings you'll oversleep. Some plans will fail. Unexpected problems will appear. Life will interrupt even your best schedule. The mistake isn't having a bad day. The mistake is allowing one bad day to become a bad week. Imagine dropping your phone. The screen cracks. Would you throw the entire phone into the ocean because of one accident? Of course not. You repair it and continue using it. Treat your habits the same way. Miss one workout. Return tomorrow. Skip one study session. Open the book the next day. Lose focus for an afternoon. Restart immediately. Don't let temporary mistakes become permanent identities. Perfection isn't required. Persistence is. And persistence becomes much easier once you understand another life-changing principle. The people who consistently achieve extraordinary results don't measure success by whether every day is flawless. They measure success by whether they're becoming slightly better than they were yesterday. That tiny shift in thinking changes everything. Because once you stop chasing perfection, you finally become free to chase progress. And as you'll soon discover, progress becomes even more powerful when you learn one final skill that separates exceptional performers from everyone else. Evaluating your life in a way that builds confidence instead of destroying it, while creating a simple daily system you can follow for years without feeling overwhelmed. One of the biggest reasons people stop chasing their dreams isn't a lack of ability. It's the way they choose. Think about the last time something didn't go according to plan. Maybe you missed a workout. Maybe you couldn't finish an important project. Maybe you failed an interview, scored lower than expected on an exam, or made a mistake at work. What happened next? For many people, one mistake quickly becomes a personal identity. I failed. I'm not disciplined. I always ruin everything. But pause for a moment. If a pilot experiences turbulence during a flight, does he assume he'll never become a good pilot? Of course not. He studies what happened. He adjusts. He flies again. Professionals evaluate performance. Amateurs attack themselves. That single difference changes everything. Imagine two runners competing in the same marathon. Both finish slower than they hoped. The first runner spends the entire evening criticizing himself. I'm terrible. I'll never improve. What's the point? The second runner asks different questions. Where did I lose energy? What can I improve before the next race? Which part of my preparation worked well? Both experience the same result. But only one walks away with useful information. Life isn't determined only by what happens to you. It's determined by the questions you ask afterward. Successful people don't ignore mistakes. They simply refuse to waste them. Every setback contains information. Every disappointment carries a lesson. Every failure leaves behind instructions for improvement, if you're willing to look for them. Imagine trying to assemble a 1,000-piece puzzle. Would you become angry every time one piece doesn't fit? No, you simply pick another piece. Eventually the picture becomes clear. Goals work exactly the same way. Every incorrect attempt brings you closer to the correct one. That's why progress is rarely a straight line. It's a series of adjustments. Many people secretly believe that successful individuals never struggle with self-doubt. Nothing could be further from the truth. The difference isn't the absence of doubt. It's the refusal to obey it. Confidence isn't something people are born with. It's something they build, and they build it one promise at a time. Think back to childhood. Suppose someone promised to pick you up after school every day. If they arrived exactly on time for months, you'd begin trusting them completely. Why? Because their actions repeatedly matched their words. Now ask yourself a difficult question. Can you say the same about the promises you make to yourself? When you say, I'll start tomorrow, do you? When you promise to study for 1 hour, do you? When you decide to exercise, do you? Every promise you keep strengthens self-trust. Every unnecessary promise you break quietly weakens it. Your relationship with yourself is built exactly the same way every other relationship is built. Through consistency. That's why it's often better to make smaller promises and keep every one of them than to make enormous promises you rarely fulfill. Never underestimate the power of small victories. Imagine filling a large glass jar. If you throw in one giant rock, it occupies only part of the space. But when you keep adding small stones every single day, eventually the jar becomes completely full. Success isn't one giant achievement. It's thousands of small victories stacked together. One completed chapter, one healthy meal, one focused work session, one difficult conversation, one promise kept. None of them seem life-changing on their own. Together, they become a completely different life. Now let's discuss something people rarely think about. Communication. Most people believe productivity is only about managing themselves. But eventually, every important goal requires working with other people. Whether you're leading a team, preparing for a job interview, speaking in a meeting, teaching a classroom, creating YouTube videos, building a business, or simply talking with your family, your ability to communicate determines how effectively your ideas create impact. Imagine an architect who designs an incredible building but cannot explain the blueprint to the construction team. Would the building ever exist? Probably not. Ideas only change the world after they're understood. That's why clarity is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Before an important conversation, don't simply hope the right words appear. Prepare. Ask yourself, what is the one message I want this person to remember? Not 10 messages. 1. Because people rarely remember everything. They remember what was repeated clearly. Think about the greatest speeches in history. Most weren't remembered because they contained hundreds of ideas. They were remembered because they communicated one powerful message with remarkable clarity. Whether you're speaking to one person or a million, simplicity always wins. Another overlooked habit is listening. Many people enter conversations planning what they'll say next instead of truly hearing the other person. Imagine trying to solve a puzzle without first looking at the pieces. That's what poor listening feels like. Real listening creates trust. It shows respect. It reveals problems hidden beneath words. Sometimes the most valuable sentence in a conversation isn't something you say. It's a thoughtful question. Questions open doors. Arguments usually close them. Now imagine you're leading a small team. One employee misses a deadline. You could immediately criticize them. Or you could ask, what obstacle prevented this from getting finished? The second approach creates understanding instead of fear. Great leaders aren't simply great speakers. They're great listeners. And the same principle applies when speaking to yourself. Listen carefully to your inner conversations. Because your mind believes what it hears repeatedly. Let's return to something we mentioned earlier. Preparation. Many people prepare only after pressure arrives. They begin studying the night before the exam. They practice presentations the morning of the meeting. They start saving money only after financial problems appear. Preparation under pressure is always more expensive than preparation before pressure. Think about building a shelter. Would you begin constructing it after the storm arrives? Or before dark clouds appear? Life rewards people who prepare before they're forced to. The student who studies consistently rarely fears examinations. The athlete who trains daily rarely panics before competition. The business owner who plans ahead handles unexpected challenges with greater confidence. Preparation creates calm, and calm creates better decisions. Perhaps that's one of the greatest hidden benefits of planning tomorrow today. It doesn't simply improve productivity. It reduces anxiety. Much of our stress comes from uncertainty. What should I do first? What if I forget something? Where do I even begin? Planning answers those questions before panic has a chance to ask them. The mind becomes quieter. Focus becomes easier. Action becomes smoother. But here's something equally important. Preparation doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It simply makes you stronger than it. Imagine sailing across the ocean. You cannot control the wind. You cannot stop the waves. But you can strengthen your ship. Likewise, you can't control every problem life sends your way. Unexpected illness, economic changes, delays, disappointments, criticism, failure. All of these remain part of life. The goal isn't controlling every storm. The goal is becoming someone capable of sailing through them. And that's exactly what these daily habits are doing. They're quietly strengthening your character long before the biggest challenges arrive. Most people notice success only when it becomes visible. The promotion, the medal, the business, the published book, the healthy body. But those visible achievements are only the surface. The real transformation happened months, or even years, earlier. It happened during ordinary evenings when someone chose tomorrow's priorities. It happened during difficult mornings when they worked despite not feeling motivated. It happened every time they honored a commitment instead of an excuse. Extraordinary lives are built during ordinary days. That's the secret very few people ever see. Now imagine yourself 1 year from today. 2 different futures stand in front of you. In the first future, nothing changes. Tomorrow looks exactly like today. Distractions continue winning. Important work continues waiting. Promises continue breaking. 1 year passes surprisingly fast. Now picture the second future. Every evening, you spend just a few quiet minutes preparing for tomorrow. Every morning, you begin with your most meaningful task. You stop expecting perfection and start valuing consistency. You measure progress instead of chasing impossible standards. You protect your attention like your most valuable asset. Will every day be perfect? No. Will every week go exactly according to plan? Probably not. But after hundreds of small decisions, your life begins moving in a completely different direction. Not because of one giant breakthrough. Because of one quiet habit repeated again and again. And that's how remarkable lives are created. Not in dramatic moments that everyone notices. But in peaceful moments when no one is watching. The final lesson may be the most important of them all. Because knowing what to do is never enough. The real challenge is turning these ideas into a simple daily system you can continue for years without feeling overwhelmed. And that's exactly where we'll finish our journey. And now we've arrived at the most important question. What happens after this video ends? Because information alone has never changed anyone's life. Every year, millions of people read books about productivity, discipline, and personal growth. They highlight pages, save motivational quotes, and watch inspiring videos. For a few hours, or maybe a few days, they feel energized. Then life returns to normal. The notebook closes. The excitement fades. And everything stays exactly the same. Knowledge is powerful, but only when it becomes action. Imagine buying the world's best map but never leaving your house. Would the map change your destination? Of course not. Its value comes only when you start walking. The same is true for every lesson you've heard today. These ideas aren't meant to stay inside a notebook. They're meant to become part of your everyday life. So let's make this incredibly simple. Forget trying to transform your entire life overnight. Forget creating the perfect routine. Forget chasing impossible standards. Instead, focus on building one day at a time. Tonight, before you go to bed, spend just 5 quiet minutes with yourself. Take a notebook, a diary, or even a simple piece of paper. Write down the 3 most important things you want to accomplish tomorrow. Not 20, not 10, just 3. Then look at those 3 tasks and ask yourself, if tomorrow goes completely off track, which one absolutely must get finished? Circle that one. That's your mission. Tomorrow morning, before the world begins asking for your attention, before social media starts pulling you in, before notifications start competing for your focus. Complete that one task first. You don't have to finish everything. You only have to win the most important battle. After you've completed it, something remarkable happens. The pressure begins to disappear. Instead of spending the rest of the day wondering whether you've done enough, you already know you've moved your life forward. Everything else becomes a bonus. That simple shift changes how you experience your day. Now imagine repeating that process tomorrow night, and the night after that. Then for 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, a year. At first, the changes will be almost invisible. Your friends probably won't notice. Your family may not notice. Even you might wonder if anything is changing. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary is happening. You're becoming someone who finishes what they start. You're becoming someone who keeps promises to themselves. You're becoming someone who acts before making excuses. And those qualities eventually become impossible to hide. People often ask, what's the secret behind successful people? They expect to hear about a revolutionary morning routine, a magical productivity app, a hidden shortcut. But more often than not, the answer is surprisingly ordinary. Successful people simply repeat useful behaviors long after everyone else has become distracted. They don't wait for inspiration. They create consistency. Imagine watching 2 rivers. One rushes loudly after heavy rain but dries up within days. The other flows quietly every single day of the year. Which one shapes the landscape? The quiet one. Not because it's dramatic. Because it's consistent. Your daily habits are exactly like that river. Each individual action seems small. 1 page read. 1 workout completed. 1 difficult phone call made. 1 hour of focused work. 1 healthy meal. 1 evening spent planning instead of scrolling. None of these actions seem life-changing on their own. But together, they slowly reshape your future. The world often celebrates giant achievements while ignoring the tiny decisions that created them. We admire the finished building without thinking about the thousands of bricks laid one by one. We applaud the athlete on the podium without remembering the early mornings when nobody was watching. We celebrate the successful entrepreneur without seeing the countless evenings spent solving problems instead of making excuses. Behind every extraordinary result is a long chain of ordinary decisions. That's encouraging, because it means greatness isn't reserved for a lucky few. It's available to anyone willing to repeat the right actions consistently. Remember something important. Your future self is quietly depending on the choices you make today. Imagine meeting yourself 5 years from now. What kind of conversation would you like to have? Would your future self thank you for staying focused when distractions were everywhere? Would they appreciate the evenings you spent preparing instead of postponing? Would they be grateful that you kept going even when motivation disappeared? Or would they ask why you kept waiting for the perfect time that never came? That future conversation is being written today. With every choice, every habit, every promise, every excuse, time moves forward whether we prepare or not. Tomorrow will arrive. The question isn't whether tomorrow is coming. The question is whether you'll be ready when it does. Life doesn't demand perfection. It asks for intention. You don't need to control every hour. You simply need to give your most valuable hours a purpose. You don't need to eliminate every distraction. You only need to become stronger than the distractions that matter most. You don't need to know every step of the journey. You only need enough courage to take the next one. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson from today's journey. Extraordinary lives aren't built by extraordinary days. They're built by ordinary days lived with extraordinary intention. Every evening becomes an opportunity to prepare. Every morning becomes an opportunity to act. Every setback becomes an opportunity to learn. Every success becomes an opportunity to improve. This cycle never truly ends. Prepare, focus, act, reflect, improve, then begin again. Simple, calm, intentional. Year after year, those small decisions quietly create a life that once seemed impossible. So before you leave this video, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Tonight, somewhere in the world, millions of people will go to sleep hoping tomorrow will somehow be different. But hope alone has never organized a day. Planning has. Action has. Consistency has. Be the person who chooses tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. Because when you organize tomorrow today, you're doing far more than planning a schedule. You're shaping the person you'll become. Thank you for spending your time with Volume and Vision. If this summary gave you a new way to think about productivity and inspired you to take control of your time instead of letting time control you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Volume and Vision, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Share this video with someone who always says, "I don't have enough time." It might be the one idea that completely changes the way they approach every single day. Until next time, remember this. Your future isn't created tomorrow. It's created by what you choose to do today for tomorrow. Take care, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next video.